Hola mis amigos, thank you for joining me once again. It's a little while since I did my last video on installing a heddle rod, so I have done it quite a number of times since then, and I've come up with a few things I think make it just a little bit easier, just a couple of tips to simplify the process. So the first one is, if you review the other heddle rod video that I've got, I measured my threads by going around the heddle like this and tying it on, and that's fine, it works absolutely fine. But I just think what is a little bit easier is to make that thread a little bit shorter. Now when I measure around my heddle rod, it comes to about 13.5 inches. What I'm suggesting is you go for about, try 11 inches and cut your thread at that point. So really you're taking off 2.5 inches roughly, and use that instead. Now what that does, install it in the regular way like you did before. So we tie the knot on the end, just tie the knot fairly close to the end, and then I've got my pickup pattern just sitting here ready to go, so I can see that one. I'm going to pick up 3 there, take the loop underneath, and I've already started on the first one there, and take the rod through the loops as well. I've also changed the rod that I use. I use a piece of dowel now. I did have like a stick before. It was kind of like a piece of dowel as well, but it had been used as a painting stick, and it was a little bit shiny, the surface, and a little bit slippery. So this dowel is really good. I don't need to tape that there or anything. They just stay there because it's got the right amount of friction. So give that a try yourself. Just making it a little bit shorter. As I said, about 2.5 inches shorter does the trick. And just install that as normal. And then when I get to actually working my pattern and I have the heddle in the up position, when I lift this, it lifts the threads up really nice and clear. I just found with the other method, when the strings are a little bit longer, that I had to lift this further. So I guess it's a little bit more labor intensive, like on your shoulder and everything. And you want to cut down on that kind of thing wherever possible. Well, I do anyway, because I get sore shoulders. Now the other thing that you might notice that I've done here when I'm installing these, another thing that's different to the other video that I did, is I would have done each of these warp threads separately. So I would have done a string for each of those threads separately. Now I've found that if you have only a few warp threads, like I've got 3, they're in 3s here, which isn't that many, I can easily bunch them together, and when I lift that up it works just fine. So once again, I'm cutting down on the amount of work that I need to do, because otherwise I would have to do 3 times as many of these little string heddles to hold them up. I think if you had more than 3 or 4 threads, you might be pushing it, because you might get issues with it getting stuck and lifting some threads unevenly and that sort of thing, but you can experiment with that as well. Now the second thing I wanted to talk about was looking at your pattern in a creative way to also cut down on the amount of work that you need to do. So my pattern for this one, let me have a look, is 5 down 3 up, and that is my stick A. But what I actually did, normally I would install the heddle rod for stick B. I've actually installed it for stick A instead, and I have made this one my stick B. If you look at the threads, it'll make sense to you why I did this. Okay, so here's our stick B. We've got all these threads sitting on top, and here's my stick A, which will soon be my heddle rod when I remove this pickup stick, which I won't need. And it's only got 3 like I said, 3 threads at a time. Now if I had to make a heddle rod for this one, and I had to make rods for, say, every 2 groupings or every individual thread, that would be a bit more labor intensive. So I actually swapped them over so that I'm installing the heddle rod for stick A. This works perfectly for this pattern because my sequence is exactly the same for stick A and stick B. So in some patterns you'll have stick A, you're going to repeat your pattern sequence say 3 times, and then stick B you might repeat it say 6 times. If you're likely to get confused, then it may not be best for you to install the rod as stick B or stick C if you're using even more. But for this one, it doesn't really make a difference because the pattern sequence is exactly the same whether it's stick A or stick B. I just swap over from stick A, I repeat the sequence, I think I'm doing it 5 or 6 times, and then I swap to the other stick and do the same thing. So there's no confusion for me for that sort of thing, and it really cuts down on the time that I have to spend, you know, stringing up all of these little heddles and stuff. So if you have any questions, ask away. I don't know whether I've made perfect sense to you or whether it makes no sense at all. Hopefully it makes some sense and helps you out a little bit. Till next time.